MeasuringHistory.com presents the Neptune-Pluto Paradox. This one is very important. It's Neptune-Pluto waves of 495 years, give or take 2 or 3 years, can and do act as ages of history. They're just ages of history seen from a different perspective. And as you can see, it's every 495 years, Neptune and Pluto align longitudinally, give or take 2 or 3 years. The last time that they aligned was 1893. We'll get to that later. And also, one of the things about these Neptune-Pluto periods is that they have different themes, as you would expect with any age, different cultural changes, geographical changes, etc., that are common throughout a given period. And what is definite about these Neptune-Pluto periods after a few years of study is that each one of these contains a paradox. And as you can see, a paradox is defined as a true statement or a group of statements that lead to a contradiction or a situation which defies intuition. That's the definition that Measuring History is going to use. There are other definitions of paradox, but this one does for now. Consider it, the easiest way is to consider it irony, but it's actually more than irony, and it's a paradox. Every 495-year period has one of these. For instance, the Hellenization paradox, which Measuring History calls paradox 334 BC Hellenization. The 334 comes from the fact that 334 is the halfway point of the 576 Neptune-Pluto 85 BC wave. And the reason why Hellenization is a paradox is because Hellenization would not have occurred had it not been for Alexander's adventures across Eurasia, which led to the Seleucid Wars, which led to the generals fighting among themselves and basically spreading Hellenization throughout Eurasia. It was on the foundation of Hellenization that Rome built its empire. The Hellenized world was one that not only spoke the Greek language, but used Greek ways of business. They were common throughout Eurasia. So Hellenization basically was a combination of the lingua franca of the time and the Code Napoleon of the time. It was used, Greek ways were used in the courts, in philosophy, in writing, and that played a major foundation. Basically, the Romans didn't have to make anything up because the Greek had Hellenized the entire area, and the Greeks just built their culture, obviously not physically, but in a literal way, built their culture on top of the Hellenized world. And speaking of the Romans, Measuring History calls their paradox 168 the Roman soldier, because Rome lived and died on its military. One of the ways that we can see this from the very beginning of the 85 BC Neptune-Pluto 409 wave, of which 168 is the exact middle, is that General Sulla in about 88 BC used his troops to secure his dictatorship of Rome. It brought Rome under control, but it was also the first inklings of the collapse of the Republic. Basically, it was over when he marched his troops in. And the Roman soldiers knew that they had political power to name an emperor, to kill an emperor. An emperor, most of the time, had to have some sort of military prowess. And of course, Roman soldiers got rich from being soldiers, through looting, through the fact that once they retired, they were promised farms. So there was a large impetus for Rome to expand. And that's when we see it 168, Rome changes basically from a offensive culture to a defensive culture. It had built up so much territory that it had to defend it, and it also built up such territory that management became unwieldy. Everybody wanted to be Roman because they wanted the Roman spoils, and it was a culture that was also built on the foundation of soldiers having political power and emperors being all caught up in that. And once the respect for the Roman army started to fall, Rome started to fall. Rome didn't know what it stood for. And that's the Roman paradox, because it had so relied on its military. Once its military was not as effective, the whole culture fell apart. So coming up to the present paradox, which I call paradox 2140 progress, we get the same thing. Progress makes us weak, progress makes us strong. As you can see, other paradoxes fall under the main paradox, progress. And these are, in the opinion of measuring history, science and technology, new morality, resources, information overload, sustainability, and one world. And one needn't be too much of a scholar to realize that these are major issues facing us now, and that not only they are major issues, but they are paradox. None of them are easily solvable, and once you try to solve one, something else sort of breaks on the other end. So that's why it's a paradox, and that's why, as paradox by definitions, are not easy to solve. So obviously we're going to get into more detail on paradox 2140. Also, if you want to get more information about how to use waves, just look on this channel for how to use waves, and there's of course other videos you want to watch. And also make sure you check out the waves blog, measuringhistory.com. This is all you have to do to type that in to get there. Measuring History on Facebook. When you get there, please like and then join in the conversation. And of course, please subscribe on the YouTube channel. And thanks for watching.